Okay, here we are. Welcome everybody to today's webinar. My name is Katrin Häuser. I'm the director of Little Yoga Space. And in today's webinar, I'm joined by Lucy, who, just going to keep letting some people into the meeting. Lucy is, many of you probably know her already. She has been a yoga teacher at the Yoga Space for quite some time, and more recently she's offering quite a few beautiful collaborations with Martina, who's actually also here, if you want to give a quick wave. Some of these events turning rather popular, like the deep rest and some other beautiful things. But today, Lucy is actually going to speak to us about yoga and Ayurveda for women's health. So quite a specific topic, something a bit different, especially bringing the whole Ayurvedic lens into things. And maybe some of you have had experience with Ayurveda. Maybe that's something completely new to you. I'm sure Lucy will explain that a bit more. But first I want to say hello, Lucy.
Hi.
Hello. So welcome here. Lucy, how, maybe you could actually just give us a little background as to how you found your way. I'm assuming it was kind of like from the yoga to Ayurveda, or which way around was it? How did you find Ayurveda? How did that come into your life?
Yeah, from my yoga teacher training, we did quite a lot of Ayurvedic training as part of that training. And I was just always really, really drawn to it and just fascinated by it. So it was just something that, yeah, I learned quite a lot about on that training. And then I always was like, I'm going to do something at some point and learn more. So this year I started doing a holistic health and modern Ayurveda for modern times course. So I'm still currently in training with that. So yeah, it's just been really interesting using myself as a guinea pig always. And just learning. Yeah, it's just beautiful stuff that really kind of makes sense to me. And it kind of, yeah, I was always drawn to it. Yeah, especially for women's health, which is obviously what I'm talking
about. I found that sounds really beautiful. The Ayurvedic in, you said like the modern times, modern life or something like this. I mean, that's, you know, that is just a whole webinar in its own. Yeah. the relevance of these ancient and Eastern practices and medicines, and actually, you know, using them in today's time, because they are just so relevant, and they might actually, you know, there might actually be the solution very soon, and they're coming more and more into their strength, because there's so much chronic disease and chronic pain, and so much disturbance in people's nervous system leading to all of these health issues, that modern medicine is not going to be able to fix anymore, or is already not able to really fix. So I'm very much hoping for this whole new kind of like a revolution in like modern medicine, because we're going to be drawing on all of these ancient practices and kind of some really different approaches. So I'm secretly excited about that.
Yeah, yeah, and it makes it accessible as well and kind of doable. You know, in slotting it into like a modern life. Yeah, and I think also it's an empowering thing. You can, you know, take it into your own hands, rather than, I think we used to give a lot of this power away, and now we're being kind of forced to, whether we want to or not, kind of like take agency for our own well-being, for whatever, you know, for lots of different reasons now. So yeah, it's an interesting time, and I think people are very like receptive to it, it seems.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I'm going to hand over to you. I know you have a beautiful presentation planned. There will be time for questions at the end. So either make a little mental note or scribble it down somewhere, or feel free to put that into the chat. I'm going to be monitoring that throughout, or if there's any technical issues, just send me a message. And then hopefully we'll have enough time to get to all of those questions at the end. And if if not, we'll try to get back to you maybe later. So yeah, or you can also unmute yourself later on. That's also fine to ask a question. So over to you, Lucy.
Thank you. Okay, so just a little overview of what we were going to look at. Obviously, this is kind of more of a general overview, and then the workshop will go more into detail with things, which is in 2 weeks on the 31st. But we're going to look at what is the cycle and why it's important. How does Ayurveda and yoga view the menstrual cycle? Some fun facts. I had to really whittle this down because there's a lot of fun facts about periods. Big hormone disruptors. We'll do a little bit of movement. And then we're going to look at breaking down the cycles. And we'll have some takeaway tips and some more information about the workshop as well. So yeah, as a disclaimer, we are talking about the menstrual cycle, so this phase in life. Obviously, there is Ayurveda and yoga and women's health for after that time as well. And also, you know, there are different phases of life that it is also applicable for, but this is the time I'm talking about here. So a little bit of my journey to that. Obviously, I talked about coming into Ayurveda and training in that now, but with kind of connecting to my own menstrual cycle, I stopped taking the pill in 2016, mainly just as like an experiment, because I've been taking it for 16 years. So I was like, okay, I've never been an adult without taking this synthetic hormone. Let's just see what happens. Maybe my body wants a break. So I just kind of, yeah, as an experiment, and my period came back quite quickly. It was quite regular and all that kind of stuff, but the PMS was really intense. It was really an emotional roller coaster. But in a way, I kind of appreciate it because I was like, well, at least this is real, you know, I'm with the real thing that's happening. And it's when I really kind of connected the connection of moods and energy to the menstrual cycle, which I know sounds kind of obvious, but like, I really don't think that I did do that before, apart from the obvious stuff. But I really didn't. I just thought, oh God, like, why am I so up and down? Like, why am I having these mood swings? Like, there must be something wrong with me. And then it was quite a revelation to be like, okay, like, this is actually part of a thing. And it's not just me. So yeah, that was when I started to kind of make that connection. And also on the other side of that, I mean, I would feel very angry around my period. I would feel really sad during my period. But then also when I was like ovulating and the other time, I would feel amazing. And I honestly don't think I'd ever felt that good. I was like, oh, I feel like really like, not that I was always miserable, but I think it was just a bit more like everything was kind of a bit muted. So it was the extremes, good and bad. So anyway, I thought, well, I need to probably balance these hormones because they seem to be a bit mad. So that was when I kind of connected it with yoga, Ayurveda, because I was already kind of doing that. And I always looked to that for solutions and help and support with whatever. And so, yeah, actually, I was going to say the first time when I ovulated, actually, naturally, it freaked me out so much that I had to Google it because I thought there was something wrong with me. And then again, when I Googled it and it said, oh, this is a perfectly healthy thing, it's exactly what you would want to happen. I was like, why do I not know about this? I'm like, you know, in my 30s, and I thought there was something wrong when it's actually the opposite. Like, why don't I know this? Why doesn't anybody know this? Because I know all my friends had the same experience. We just didn't know. Even my friends who'd had children, they knew about ovulation because they'd got pregnant, but they didn't really know. You know, we just didn't know because we're just not taught these things. So anyway, and then when I looked to yoga and Ayurveda, it was just a really, again, a beautiful way to experience it. And it's because it's so connected with nature, you know, it just kind of made sense to me that it's connected to the moon, it's connected to cycles, you know, everything is kind of ebbing and flowing. We don't have to be the same all the time, and we're not going to be. So that was something that was just, yeah, lots of revelations and little like, oh, light bulb moments. So yeah, that's kind of my story into it and how I've kind of connected the two things. And so as women, we are hormonally driven beings. So physically, the body is ebbing and flowing. So like I said, with like the moon phases, we're not always full. You know, we can't have a continuous inhale without the exhale. So we do need both. And in Tantra yoga, they would call this spanda, which is the cycling expanse and contraction of energy. So it's this divine pulse, which births everything. You know, this is how babies are born. It's a contraction and an expansion. So this is the energy that kind of moves everything. And it's a full cycle. Like we need both. We need the expansion and the contraction. So you could think of this also as like yin and yang, or like masculine, feminine energies rather than like gender, but sun and moon. So these two things that are always at play with inside of us. So these ebbs and flows, and we always have both. And I think, especially when I was younger, I think also just in our general culture, the yang rather than the yin is what's valued. It's like more, be more productive, do more, be like a man. I remember saying when I was younger, it was kind of like you just go all the time. And we never had time for that kind of softer, more feminine yin side, you know, taking time to rest and just, allowing ourselves to be a little bit softer, which, you know, is just as powerful, but has often been kind of suppressed a little bit due to the patriarchy, capitalism, but that's a different that's a different topic. But yeah, this is why it's such a good reason to get in touch with this kind of stuff as well, because it is a bit of a rebellious act to educate ourselves, to become kind of empowered, and to take time to rest, take time to go inwards, to appreciate the whole spectrum of our ebbs and flows. Soft and strong at the same time, I like to say. So during these ebbs and flows, during the cycle, there's times when we're going to feel more aroused, more productive, creative, and times when we do need that rest, that more yin-like inward quality. And then there's times in our cycle where we might be fertile, times where we are not going to be. And so it's about embracing all the parts rather than resisting. You know, it is going with the flow, I guess you say, nature's rhythms, and not fighting against them. So Ayurveda is the healing system, and it's kind of someone right there. It's not yet. It's the sister science to yoga. So it's kind of like Chinese medicine, but the Indian one. And it has it's linked with yoga in lots of ways. Like I learned about it in my teacher training, as I said. And it offers a unique approach to health for individuals who menstruate by honoring and supporting nature's wisdom and the cycles of the body. So it's based on foundational principles, which are people who carry life represent wisdom and creativity of the universe. People who menstruate have hormonal cycles that are intimately connected to nature's cycles. Through nurturing and supportive lifestyle practices, individuals who have periods can become more effortlessly in flow through physical and emotional cycles of life, because we get used to the ups and the downs. And every person is unique. By listening to the signals of the body and the mind, we can choose healthy practices to stay in balance. It's also seen as a major pillar of health. So it's a big deal. And one of the most unique aspects of menstruating bodies is the connection to, as I said, nature's rhythms via this monthly cycle, this monthly changing. And ideally, a sattvic lifestyle is always promoted in Ayurveda, but especially for women, which promotes harmony and a kind of more pure way of being, which would be like fresh fruits, seasonal, again, eating with nature, well cooked, very easy to digest, sleeping well, and working to our own rhythms, working with the rhythms of the day and the rhythms of the seasons as we go. And rest and reflection is always encouraged and is a very important thing, especially during menstruation. So during that more like inward winter time. And so Ayurveda works with on a person to person basis. So it's a really individual practice. So everybody's different. Everybody has a unique constitution, and the constitutions are based on elements. So these will also govern different parts of the cycle. You can do a test. Also, we'll do this in the workshop where you can do a test so you'll know your own personal dosha, and you'll see how that will be reflected more in your cycle as well. I'm just going to share an image here so you can see the elements. Yeah. So we have Vata, which is air and ether, so space, Pitta, which is fire, and then earth and water. So you might know already what your dosha is, or you might be drawn to like one more than the other. You might kind of instinctively know which one you might be. We have all of them inside of us, but we generally tend to be one more than another. And so, yes, these govern ourselves. These are our internal elements that are always there. And also they are going to show up in our cycle as well. Cool. And from a yogic perspective, again, they are kind of intertwined. And yoga also, they definitely do talk about honoring natural cycles, working with the wisdom of the body and not against it. There is, in some traditions, they might say not to practice or do any exercise when you're kind of having your period. And menstruation is seen as this kind of powerful energetic force. So we have this apana vayu, which is downward energy. And with yoga, Ayurveda, also Chinese medicine, it is about keeping things moving, not letting anything be stagnant. So this downward energy of apana vayu is responsible for menstruation, childbirth, going to the toilet, anything that's going down and out. And so with maybe a strong yoga practice or inversions where you're going to go upside down, they would suggest to not do that, because obviously you're going to flip that flow, which should be going downwards. I mean, I would say, I don't think it's harmful to do that if you wanted to do an inversion or something while you're on your period, but it's more about, do you want to do that? You know, do you feel like you have the energy to do that? Would you not prefer to maybe do a restorative class, a yin class, rather than doing something that's super physical, super strenuous? So again, it's the yoga of self-inquiry and asking yourself what you actually need more than anything else. Yeah, and it would make sense that because we're ebbing and flowing all the time, that we wouldn't want to do the same practices every day anyway. So that's kind of your call. Great. So I'm just going to share another diagram with you. This is a big one. The uterus. So you can see here, we have the uterus, and also you can see the moon cycles here. So it is possible that your cycle might sync with the moon. I have found this after doing energy clearing womb practices, that I have synced with the moon, but it can flip, and it also might not be the case, but it is possible. And it's also good to work with if they're irregular, through seed cycling and things like this, which we'll talk about later. But it can be quite a nice energy if you do sync with the moon. Particularly, I found this way, because you have a bit stronger energy for full moon, and you're ovulating and then bleeding in a new moon, which is the dark moon, a bit more of a softer kind of inward, darker time anyway. But again, might not be the case for you. It does depend. And the cycle, like the moon cycle, is 28, 29 days. So, and I know we would normally say that about periods as well, 28 days, but between 21 and 35 days would be normal also. Cool. So, fun facts. So yeah, like I said, I had to whittle this down because there are a lot of fun facts. Well, I find them fun, so I hope you find them interesting. So we are born with all the eggs that we'll ever have. So technically, when you're in your mother's womb, she will have carried you and any other children that you were to have, because they would have being inside you at the same time. So kind of like a Russian doll thing. Cramping and bloating and pain are signs of hormonal imbalance. I know they're often seen as normal now. And also, if you've ever noticed that you've cycled with your friends or work colleagues or any women you were in close contact with, this is an evolutionary advantage for women, as the synchronization of the pregnancies they would have would mean that childcare could be shared among multiple mothers. Obviously, this is living in communities and tribes, if they're all having children at the same time. And women prefer feminine phases when they are least fertile and more masculine phases when they are at their most fertile. And also your face becomes more symmetrical when you're ovulating. So we literally become a little bit more attractive when we're ovulating, because it would be the prime time to look for a mate. And you might find when you are in your period time, you often feel like, oh, I feel gross, you know, and maybe small spots come out and things like this as well. So it is not just you, it is nature. So of course you can get a mate anytime, but that is a bit of evolutionary help there. And so disruptors to hormones. So some of these might be obvious ones, or they might be new to you, but stress is a big one. Not enough sleep, being disconnected from natural rhythms. So as we were talking that yin and yang, maybe being too forceful, going full steam, burning out, not resting enough. Or even the other way, you might have energy to burn and you're not moving it, you know, when you do have that energy to go. Not enough time in natural light, or just being in nature in general. Going to the toilet regularly is very important. Too much sugar, alcohol, caffeine, processed foods. We know these things. Also, generally quite a big thing with women is not eating enough carbs, fats, good fats, and protein. I know a lot of women tend to be restrictive, or we're taught that, you know, you shouldn't eat fats and things like this, but if it's restricted, the body thinks it's in trouble and it causes stress. So again, that disrupts the endocrine system, hormones. So we need to be eating enough. And then contraception also. So this is a disclaimer. Obviously, if you take contraception, if you take the pill or any hormonal contraception, obviously that is your call, more power to you if that's what you need to do. And you've been informed on all the options that you have. But I would say with the pill, especially, it is given to treat imbalances, but it in fact just kind of masks them, because you're given a false bleed. So often people will take the pill for a long period of time, come off, and then realize there's an issue that was actually covered by. So it's not actually balancing your hormones, it's just kind of putting a little mask on it. But it's your call, you know, you have to make the choice. So, but yeah, it is actually a disruptor rather than being something that is balancing your hormones, as we are kind of taught to believe. And then quite a big one is alcohol. So alcohol depletes magnesium in the body, which can make PMS worse. It also keeps the liver really busy. So this is, if you were to drink alcohol when you're on your period, the liver already needs to work a little bit harder to break down excessive hormones. But obviously, if it's distracted by trying to break down the toxicity of alcohol, it means that you might have a worse period. You might get more pain, worse PMS, etc. So, yes, there are different times in your cycle which it's going to be better to do certain things, but we'll talk about that as we go along. And so if you do have an irregular period, or you are feeling like there's already some imbalances, maybe just emotional PMS like what I experienced, or maybe pain or heavy periods, a really natural and nice way to kind of sync this back up is to use seed cycling. So I'm just going to show you an image of this. And this is something that worked really well for me. Yeah. And my sister also didn't have a period for about a year, and then she did this once for a full cycle, and it came back after a month. So it really does work. So you would start here. So you could start either on the first day of your period, or if you don't have a period, or if it's really irregular, you could start on the new moon. And here we take 2 tablespoons of pumpkin seeds and flax seeds daily, up to when you're ovulating or the full moon. And then we take sesame seeds and sunflower seeds. And then again, up to the beginning, where we start to have our period again. And so that's just a really nice, really simple way to sync your hormones. So yeah, give it a go. I still do it now, even though mine kind of has balanced a little bit. It still is something that I do every day. So I find it really useful. So that's a really cool, simple takeaway. Nice. Yeah. So we're going to look at the seasons of the cycle, because the seasons, the cycle can be broken into 4 phases, which you might have already heard about. And in Ayurveda, it's technically 3, but some overlap, but we'll look at both. But to begin, we're just going to take a little bit of movement. And this is quite nice. This is just general movement that we can do for, again, that kind of movement of energy, which is going to be good for not letting anything get stuck, processing emotions as they come through. And in the workshop, we'll do specific exercises and lifestyle tips for each season. But this one we'll do now is just kind of general all-rounder. So if you have space, we're just going to take a seated position. Maybe you can grab a pillow. See if you can see me here. Yeah. And just come to take a seated position. It would be good if you're kind of cross legs, or you can have your legs out in front if you like. Maybe have your hips raised with the pillow underneath. If you don't have space to move, that's okay. We're going to start with a breath work, so you can do that just sitting where you are. So we're going to do a breath work, which is Chandra Vedanan. So it's a really nice one to do in the time just before your period, where maybe you feel a bit heated, feel a bit irritated or annoyed. It can be a nice one for that time. Also, it's a nice general one. During summertime, it's nice because it's cooling breath. So we're going to start with the right hand. You're just going to put down your first 2 fingers. You can see me. Yeah. I can't really do it. I make like this little claw, but anyway, first 2 fingers. You're just going to use the thumb, really. And then the right thumb is going to come to close the right nostril. And this is the only movement that we need to do. Okay. So just letting that go. And then we'll take a breath in through both nostrils. Inhaling in. Then we're going to close the right, and you're just going to breathe out the left. Okay, and we'll do the same again, and we'll try and do it to a counted breath. So we'll do it for 4 in and then 4 out. Okay, so I'll count us in. We'll do 5. Okay, so starting to inhale, block, and then exhale. 2, 1, and then again inhaling through both. Block your nostril, exhale through the left. Again, release, inhale through both. Block the right, out through the left. And release, inhale through both. Block the right and exhale through left. One more, inhaling through both. Block the right and then out through the left. Nice. And then just letting the hands drop down. And then if you do have a seated position on the floor, we're going to take a little roll of the pelvis here. So we're going to have our hands on our knees and we're just going to roll back and forth. So we're going to take an inhale, pull the shoulder blades together and push the chest forward. And then again, as we exhale, we're going to round the spine and take the head down. So you're kind of rocking the pelvis back and forwards. Inhale, come forward. You can do this even in a chair. It's kind of like cat-cow, but seated. Exhale, round the spine, drop the head. And then again, inhale, open. Nice. And then rounding the spine. And then just coming back to a neutral spine. And we'll take a few hip rolls here. So we'll go to the right first. Rolling forwards. And then again, you can round the spine as you go back here as well. So you can make it quite an exaggerated movement. And so again, this is moving energy in the central part of the body. So where the vital organs are, the liver, the spleen, these things that are super important to our hormone distribution. And also the intestines here. This is really good to do in the morning to kind of get things going. Because as I said, digestion is a huge part of the overall well-being. And so these kind of ways to massage and wake up the organs is really good. Again, just keeping everything moving. Nice. So let's see if we can switch it around and we'll just send that back the opposite way. Again, feeling your sit bones connected with the ground here. Rounding the spine and then inhaling, open. Again, so this is like this expansion and then again, round contraction. Opening and contracting. Nice. Okay, and then from here, if it's comfortable for you, we're going to come and take our tabletop position. So taking your wrists over the shoulders over the wrists and the hips over the knees. And we'll take a few cat-cows here. So we're going to take an inhale, drop the belly and lift the chest. And then exhale, round the spine, drop the head. Again, this is also very good for digestion to do in the morning. A really simple exercise just when you wake up, inhaling. Lift the head, exhale, round the spine, drop the head, push the ground away, open up the back of the body a bit here. And again, inhale, up. And exhale to round. Nice. And then just keeping the hips where they are, coming down onto the forearms. And we're going to take like a little half inversion here. So this is quite nice. Again, if you are in your period, it can be quite a nice, simple inversion to do. So we're going to put our crown of the head on the floor. So we're looking for the crown, so you can keep the neck long, not the forehead or back of the head, but the very top of the head. And we're just going to come and roll the head down. And you can rock back and forth a little bit here. We're just keeping some nice kind of length in the spine or in the top of the neck. Okay, nice. And then let's come and take the hips back towards the heels. And from here, we're going to place the hands either side of the knees, tuck the toes, and just push the hips up. So you're going to come to be in a forward fold. So you can keep your knees super bent here. We're just going to have a little dangle. And a sigh in through the nose and out through the mouth. In through the nose and out through the mouth. So anytime we need to release, let things go, move the energy, we can just in through the nose and then just sigh it out through the mouth. So you're kind of physically and metaphorically just letting it go. And then here we'll bend into the knees, take that roll all the way up the spine. Just lift my camera a little bit here. And then we're just going to have a little shake here. So this is always a good practice, but really nice, again, in the time before your period, it can be quite nice. Again, if you've got a bit of hyped up energy, good to do before bed as well, just to kind of shift that. So just start by shaking the hands off. Yeah, so as if you've just washed your hands. And then at the same time, just put a little bounce in the knees. And then maybe lifting the heels up and down. And also let the arms be a little bit heavier here, so they kind of come like dead arms. And then we can swing side to side. You can freestyle a bit if you like, maybe even jump a little bit upside down. And then really shake the hands as fast as you can. And just really have a good shake, maybe running on the spot a little bit. Really go for it, and then just letting it slowly all kind of settle down. And so just coming to stand in Tadasana, mountain pose, feel the ground underneath your feet here. And feel the energy. You can feel the tingles in the fingertips, in the palms. Stuff is moving. And we feel that spanda, that kind of divine pulse kind of moving through us. And so just bringing yourself back down onto the ground, you can come and sit back cross-legged or where you were, and just kind of coming back down to the ground. Nice. So, yeah, those energy shifting ones are really good. And again, there are lots of specific ones we can do for different times. And also it depends on your, like we talked about, your personal constitution as well, because you might need more of one thing than the other. Breath now after that shaking. Cool. So let's talk about the seasons a little bit here. So I'm going to show you again my diagrams. So I have here we go. Here, so we can see split into the seasons. So winter would be the kind of archetype energy of menstruation, our period. And then spring is here where we're kind of building the eggs and where maybe we want to start new projects. We feel a bit of energy coming back to us. And then coming into ovulation, where maybe this is kind of peak energy. We want to socialize, we want to have fun. You might want to post on social media a bit more. All of those kind of things. You might want to arrange meetings, have good communication with people. And then coming into autumn, which is where you might experience some of the kind of more irritable, fiery kind of qualities. Here also you might find in between the autumn and the winter that you have a little bit of insomnia, which can be quite normal in the days before your period. It can get a bit kind of spacey and dreamlike in the day, kind of the night before, and then also the first day of the period, it can kind of get quite spacey. So, you know, we feel a little bit groggy. But if you can kind of rest a little bit and be with it, it can kind of feel like you're kind of getting high with it, which can be quite a nice experience if you kind of, again, we don't fight it and we kind of just let it be there. So this is kind of a really clear general overview. And then to look at the Ayurvedic one here. So this brings in the Vata, Kapha, Pitta. So Vata, which is air and space, would be here in menstruation. And then Kapha would be springtime. So you can feel with that spring-like energy, because it's earth and water, you might feel a bit more grounded. You might feel like a bit more earthy, a bit more kind of sure of yourself. And then coming in with Kapha and Vata, you might have the energy and groundedness at the same time, which is often quite a nice kind of energy to have. And then, yes, Pitta. So this is the fire. So this is why we can maybe get irritable, or we have that kind of, yeah, I mean, physically, you might feel a lot hotter here as well. And that represents summertime, autumn, going into autumn. Yeah, so you can see, and again, it does kind of make sense how they would match with the different seasons as well. But they just overlap because there's only 3 and not 4. Cool, so maybe I can leave that up here. Not. One second, let me just move this. Okay, can you just see the diagram? Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to this one because it's super simple. And so let's talk about springtime. So again, we said this is like new projects, new energy. You might feel like you start to want to exercise a little bit more. Fermented foods, high protein is really good in this time. This is when we're kind of making the eggs for ovulation. Ovulation, I mean, I'm talking about it in a very positive sense. It can also be a bit overwhelming for some people, and maybe that energy can make them feel a bit scatty and it's a bit too much. So that's also possible. Eating more fiber here is really useful. Vitamin C, vitamin B, magnesium is good here. Although magnesium is kind of good for the whole cycle, especially during the period, it's very good. Really good for sleep as well, to take it in magnesium in the evening. And then autumn. So yeah, so this is an interesting time because it can be tricky if we do feel irritable or a bit, it can kind of bring up a lot of anxiety and things like this, but it can be a really interesting time if we kind of can choose to listen to that, and maybe it's bringing things to the surface that are there all the time, but they're just kind of getting highlighted. So it can be something that we can listen to. And again, kind of embracing all parts of the cycle. You know, we are allowed to be angry also. So it's like, you know, if we channel it in the right way. But it's just an interesting, you know, you can see it as a way to be curious and be like, okay, well, what is this telling me? Why is this coming up? I find it's a time where stuff just kind of gets rehashed quite a bit. So it can be interesting. And here it can be good to eat complex carbs, again, healthy fats, leafy greens, magnesium. And this is maybe when we start to feel a little bit more tired. We might want to do a little bit less intense exercise, perhaps, maybe start doing a bit more yin or something like this, restorative practices. And then winter. So this is when we would have our period. So yeah, can be a bit spacey. Maybe we want to rest a bit more. But it can feel also quite nice sometimes when you pass the autumn phase. It's kind of like the bubble burst, the pressure's gone, and then it kind of, you can just kind of be with that. Again, it's kind of a nice time to journal about stuff. I tend to feel like a bit more sentimental and a bit more sensitive to things. So it can be quite a nice time. Can be, obviously, I know it is not always the case, for sure. And this is really when we want to eat that kind of really easy to digest foods. So foods that are really full of nutrients, healthy protein, fats, and again, magnesium is really good here. And hydration. So drinking lots of water, drinks, golden milk and things like this is really good with turmeric, and sea salt also in the milk. Yeah, and the color of the blood is really important as well, but we'll talk about that more in the workshop. But that is something that can highlight imbalances also. And you can see, you know, often our body is literally telling us like, okay, I'm showing you what's off, you know, so that can be a really interesting thing to look at as well. So yeah, and this is kind of the overview. So like I said, in the workshop, we'll go into it more detail, season by season and person by person. So we'll look at best practices for each time of the month. We'll look at the diet, lifestyle tips, and I'll give you some actual kind of recipes, which are really nice for each time of the month. And we'll do a womb focused nidra also, and some contemplation about how we connect to our cycles, and how they kind of are reflected in our day-to-day lives and our relationships also. Yeah, so also a disclaimer about like polycystic ovaries and things like this. So maybe if you were not having a period at all, as I said, this was actually what happened to my sister who hadn't had one, and she was told she had polycystic ovaries, but then it did come back with the seed cycling and a few lifestyle changes. It can be possible. So if there's any issues like that, you can always let me know in advance, or you can ask me questions about it. So yeah, but a good way to kind of get started, if you don't already, is kind of maybe get an app that can record moods and energy levels, and you can count, you know, how long your cycle is. Yeah, and just start to kind of honor each bit of it. Just see it as a kind of investigation, and just be curious about each thing as it arises. And no, we're not supposed to be the same all the time. It's all right to have the ebb and the flow. And it can be useful for planning. You know, sometimes you're like, maybe I don't want to see my parents just before my period, or maybe I want to socialize a bit more, you know, in the ovulation phase, whatever it is. Obviously, we can't always do this with work and things, but like, it can be useful sometimes if we can plan around it. And also guilt-free resting. We can rest without feeling guilty for it. And so, yeah, that's kind of the overview. So yeah, we'll go into a lot more detail in the workshop. So I was gonna put that in the chat, actually, the link for that, Katrin, if that's okay.
The link for the workshop, I already.
Oh, you put it in. Oh, yeah, okay.
See.
Oh, wait, let me get rid of that. I was going to put in my.
You want to stop sharing your screen and.
Yes.
Questions.
Yeah.
We haven't got anything in the chat at the moment, but
that's fine. You can always send me a message also if you have something later on or something.
Does anybody have a question and want to unmute themselves, or in the chat, then feel free, go ahead. Thank you, Lucy, for this beautiful presentation. I love all of those diagrams that made that really so clear, and I just thought they were really beautiful aesthetically even. So very, very nice. And yeah, I mean, you know, I find it really interesting to observe how, you know, our modern lifestyle has disconnected us from nature's wisdom and nature's cycles on every level, you know, not even just our menstrual cycle, but
yeah,
really across the board. And it's really quite detrimental to our health. So yeah, Ayurveda and Chinese medicine and yoga, all of the Eastern practices are full of this. It's like all of the Eastern practices are rooted in this.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they're really coming back into their power now in these times to support general health, women's health.
Yeah, definitely.
So does nobody has any questions? Anything that's come up for you?
Oh,
Catherine, I'd just like to thank you for the workshop. I thought it was really interesting. I mean, I'm postmenopausal, and I was just thinking to myself and reflecting, I wish I'd known, you know, what I've been able to watch now when I was experiencing some of those things. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Because I guess I can connect with also how people don't want to feel these things anymore as well. They kind of want to push everything away.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's about the understanding and how we can reconnect with this kind of natural cycle, but find more ways that empowers us to manage those. So I think it was really interesting. And I have a couple of friends who've got children and have been struggling. So I'm going to pass this on to them, some of that information. So I think that will be really helpful. But I just thought it was really interesting listening to it and the connection. So thank you.
Thank you, Gillian.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And and now I hope that people, you know, teenagers are gonna kind of know this information, because, you know, I was like, I'm 37, I'm just finding these things out, so it's kind of new information. So yeah, but I always think that I'm like, oh my god, if I'd known this when I was like a teenager, it would have been a different story. So it's yeah.
Thank you for that. And the diagrams are really useful, so it's something that I can share with them, and I think they'll find it helpful, because they're quite open to those ways of working, that, you know, they're open to connecting with more natural ways of working. So yeah, thank you for that. Interesting.
Yeah, and it's quite simple stuff as well. It's nothing, you know, it's stuff that you can do in your day, you know, just day-to-day life, small changes or little things to add in. So it's super easy.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, especially the seed cycle, to see, you know, experiment with that. I'm quite interested to see you know, what would happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, great. Thank you.
Let me know.
Yeah, I wanted to actually, those are the things that I noted down, you know, just that people actually, women, men, anyone, you know, the not knowing about this. And it's like literally, so it's part of our body, it's part of our nature. It's, you know, we live with our period for decades, and there is still, they're so ingrained in kind of society and in the culture and in kind of Western life, probably across the world in different cultures, of just not really talking about it or asking about it, or and, you know, there's this real lack of education, and in the realm of emancipation, and you know, for women having to be independent and kind of fighting their position in today's world, then this kind of softness and weakness obviously gets suppressed, and you can't, you know, it's just in the way, right? Rather than actually really being empowered from it, and being empowered from that knowledge. So
totally.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for this presentation, and thank you for doing this work. I
was going to say, actually, just because she mentioned menopause also, I think it's a similar thing with menopause as well. I think that's something that people are becoming a bit more, there's more information kind of coming out about that, and ways to also kind of help manage that phase as well. Because again, I don't think that's something that was like talked about or even understood either until quite recently. So yeah,
absolutely. I'm 44 now, and I'm not menopausal yet, but I also know that kind of more or less around the corner, whether you want it or not, you know. So, and it's beginning to just sort of be present in my awareness. And, you know, for sure, you in your 40s notice body changes, hormonal changes anyway. And I'm, you know, really sort of thinking I should start now, you know, before I'm in the midst of it, and only educate myself after, and then go, oh, if only I'd known that. But actually to start, you know, supporting, balancing my hormones in a natural way already. So you kind of also strengthening and building more resilience in a way, in the first place. So
yeah, but there is a brilliant book, I'll just say, called Period Power, which is by Maisie Hill, I think her name is. But she did, so Period Power, which is where she talks about these seasons and cycles, but also she's just written one about the menopause as well.
Thank you so much for the wisdoms. So anyone who is in and around Lisbon, you should check out Lucy's workshop, which is happening on the 31st of July. It's a Sunday in the afternoon. It's only €20, and if it's going to be anywhere near packed as this little webinar, then that is just going to be absolutely amazing. This recording will also go to you guys. It will be available, for, well, I'm going to say forever, but it will be available. You can watch this back. You can have another look at those beautiful slides and those graphics. I think that illustrates the cycle so beautifully. And maybe also have a look back at the little.
I can share my PDF if you like. Can I?
Say that again?
I could say I could share my PDF if you wanted it, but I don't know if
well, maybe you could send it to me and I can send it out in the email.
In the email, yeah.
I think you can share it through chat.
You can probably share the file. I will send an email with the recording, and then I will send the link to the workshop, and maybe also the book again and the PDF file, so then everybody has it on their computer.
And if I could, I would also like to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. So, Lucy, thank you so much for your presentation. It was very, very interesting and informative. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. I just wanted to make a small comment. If you or anyone else is experiencing pain during menstruation, one of the things that I discovered accidentally is one of the things that you can do in order to alleviate that pain is you take vitamin D with folate, but not the folic acid, folate.
Folate, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you take it throughout the cycle. So I take it on a daily basis. I mean, folate I take every other day.
Yeah.
But vitamin D you can take every day, and you can do it for longer periods of time. So there are no restrictions.
Ooh.
And that actually works. It helps you to
the pain.
Yeah.
Cramps.
Yeah.
Oh, I have to make a new diagram.
Great. Well, thank you.
So you can also try it out because I've had that problem ever since I was a little girl. It was crazy. It was crazy. And then just a couple of years ago, I discovered it accidentally because my gynecologist, suggested that I take those, but for a different problem. And once I started taking,
Oh wow!
For a different issue.
Nice coincidence.
And I started taking those, and I noticed that my pain decreased substantially.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's folate plus vitamin D.
Vitamin D. Okay, brilliant.
Yeah, give it a try. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was great.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Great insight. Wonderful. Women need to come together a lot more and share their wisdom for sure.
True. Yeah.
Great. So I'm going to leave everyone now here. Wish you a wonderful evening, maybe a restful evening. Hopefully some of you will come along to Lucy's workshop on Sunday the 31st. On a slightly separate note, anyone in and around Lisbon, we are also going to have a little social gathering, talking of, kind of just people and community coming together and supporting each other. So if anyone feels like joining us for that, that will be on Friday, the 29th of July in the evening at a little cafe called Savas, that's in Grasa. And those of you who come to the studio and know Beirut, One of our teachers is actually her cafe. Did you know? One of our teachers also runs a very, very cute little cafe. So we're going to have a bit of fresh lemonade and some finger food and chat, and you can meet the team and, you know, ask those questions. And so anyway, I'll leave you here, Lucy. Thank you so much for your
Thanks,
time,
guys. It's really
for sharing your knowledge and your practices and your expertise, and for doing all of this wonderful work. And thank you everybody else for coming along. Take care, everyone. See you soon.
Bye.
Very much. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Bye, guys.